Welcome to the ABA and PT podcast, where I interview scientists and practitioners from the world of precision teaching as they share their journeys of how they found their way to the science of human behaviour, as well as their discoveries through the use of the Standard Acceleration Chart. I'm Mandy, a scientist practitioner in Perth, Australia, impacted by my daughter with autism, who caused me to knock on enough doors to find my way to the extraordinary field of precision teaching. I'm on a journey to share how precision teaching and the Standard Acceleration Chart can change the world and make it a better place to live. I've set myself a lofty goal to seek out the giants of precision teaching and to share their journeys and discoveries to influence the work of practitioners and parents who want to be profoundly impactful with their clients and their children by having the heart to chart. Welcome to episode 18 of the ABA and PT podcast. It's approaching summer down here, down under, and a great time to welcome two previous guests to the podcast, Jack Auman and Dr. Abigail Calkin, to talk about an exciting project that Jack has launched called the Precision Positive Interaction Project, or the PPIP. You'll hear how Jack commenced this project in the midst of a world that's desperate for more positives. He tells how he was touched by an encounter with a person in the street where his smile had an enormous impact on her, and he realised he could contribute positively to the world with just a smile, a high five, or a few positive words. And so was born the PPIP. As I started thinking about this project, I started tracking PIs, or positive interactions. And immediately what I thought of was Dr. Abigail Calkin. So I reached out and asked her to join us on this podcast, which she does. She comes and shares her wisdom and her views on how to bring more positives to the world. Jack's Standard Acceleration Chart is shared in the podcast private Facebook group for those wanting to see his acceleration in positive interactions. Whether you choose to count them, chart them, or just raise awareness of how to bring some positivity into the world, I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, this is a great honour. I cannot believe I have these two people together on a podcast. I was very fortunate to have Abigail launch my podcast with me back in 2021, and she did 2 episodes with me and then later a 3rd episode. And then Jack, I just looked up, it was 2022, Jack, when I interviewed you. We called that episode The Butterfly Effect. And so I cannot believe that I get to bring these 2 incredible people together. Welcome, Abigail Calkin and Jack Auman, to the podcast. It's wonderful to have you here, and especially because we're talking about something really positive today, which I think the world needs more of. Let me start by explaining how this came about. So every year when it's track and field nationals in the US, I always think about Jack because he shares with me a love of track and field and a history of being a coach. I reach out to him normally and say, "Hi, Jack, I'm thinking of you. I'm excited for the weekend." And that opened up a conversation, Jack, about positive interactions. And this is the topic of this podcast today, talking about the Precision Positive Interaction Project. So, Jack, do you want to tell me about how this came about for you?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me on. And thank you, Abigail, for being here. It actually started like 7 or 8 years ago when I was getting my steps in, shooting for 10,000 or whatever, and just walking at a slow pace in my neighborhood. And the traffic is real slow, 25 miles per hour here. And a white van was approaching me. I was walking against traffic, and it was approaching me. And I'm in the habit of just waving, especially if it's not going to cause an accident on a main street or something. And I waved and smiled and went on my merry way. And the driver went past, and I didn't actually see her because of the reflection. And just a few seconds later, I heard a car coming behind me in my direction, and it was the same van, and slowing down. She stopped, rolled down her window, and she was just sobbing. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm really sorry. What can I do to help you? Something like that. And she said, well, you already have. And I said, I don't quite get it. And she said, I just broke up with my boyfriend of 12 years, and your wave and your smile just lifted me out of this depression and this downward state. And I thought, well, I'm glad it worked. And then as she left and I started walking some more, I thought, that's all it took, a little smile and a little wave. So then kind of fast forward to this past January, I'm in a meditation group, and we were talking about the world and the chaos and the negativity. And a lot of them were going to go to a protest down in Youngstown. And I went with them and tried that. And that was not working for me. And so I told the group the next time we met, I'm just going to go around and try every person I see, smile and wave, or a thumbs up maybe high five them, and maybe some people will want to engage in a little conversation. So I went out, and right away I was thinking of you and Abigail and all the other PT folks. I've got to count this and chart this. So I got one of those little metallic that you'll see at a sporting event, a track meet, where they're clicking to count how many spectators are coming in and what have you. And Mandy, you and I made contact. I've just got to say, before we get too far into it, before we made contact and started to say we're going to collaborate together, my chart was flat, times 1.00. And within 2 months, it went up to times 1.13.
Yes.
And I was so excited and now it's going up further because Abigail's here, and it's just what we were talking about before. Once you get together, it's a positive butterfly effect. It's, as Steve Graff would like to say, it's a synergy that's building up. And here we are, and I'm trying to figure out good places to get a lot of PIs. So,
yeah, thank you so much. It really lifted me. I think I was really in a place where I needed that. When I heard from you about it, that day I just started doing it. I found this beautiful, I'm always challenged by the count, and I'm always inspired by Abigail, and I'm trying to count behavior. I'm always like, wow, if you knew how much personal data that Abigail collects about herself, I could never live up to the same expectation. But I found this amazing counter on my Apple Watch that just sits on your watch all the time, and you can just tally so fast. So this made a really big difference to me because, when I'm working with students and things, it's often very difficult, but I just have to tap my watch once, and you can have multiple counters open at the same time. I'll put a link in the podcast to it. That's made a significant difference. And that day, my team started saying, wow, you seem so positive. And it had a profound impact on me, Jack. Also, I just love collaborating with people, and I haven't done a lot of that. So it's had a really big impact on me, and I just wanted to share it. And I immediately, of course, thought of Abigail. She's had a profound impact on me in terms of practicing positive statements about my life and about myself. And I do that with my team as well. So this just seemed like a wonderful opportunity to share precision teaching. And Abigail, can I ask you, because when we reached out to you to talk about Jack's project, you said, it would be lovely to call it the Precision Positive Interaction Project. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Oh, I do not remember that interaction, to be quite honest with you.
You said that I'd like to add precision to the beginning of anything. I think that's what I remember you saying.
Oh, okay. I can see that I would say that, definitely. I immediately thought of Chris Kilbasa coming up with precision inners. And just as an aside, he gave a keynote in Alaska to the ABBA group, and he talked about the differences and the similarities and the way each moves, each being ACT and precision inners, which basically turns into ACT and pi, a different definition of pi from 3.1416, but still. And so when I saw the precision inners, PPI, precision personal interaction, and with the project at the end, I thought, oh my goodness, do we have too many letters there for people to remember? And I don't know, I've never researched what is the ideal maximum, but just thinking about it right now, it comes down to 3. So I was thinking, well, is it precision positive interactions? And then, but more important than that is if you did a YouTube on this, Jack, we've got to get this out beyond our small group. We've got to get this out to a lot of people. And I think now is a very ripe time. And I think, the possibility of something on YouTube could be very, very good. I'd like to see 1,000 people do this and then 10,000 people do this. That definitely has been one of my thoughts the past few days in thinking about this meeting.
Lovely.
And it needs to be much broader. And I appreciate, Jack, your comment about going to they've been called protests, but protest is not what we want to do. And it's not what you're talking about, Jack. You're talking about the opposite of a protest. You're talking about, let's turn this around and make this positive. And there have been a few of the, No Kings or whatever they are, called different weeks. What is it? Yes, workers, no billionaires or something. And I have gone to some, not here in Juneau, but in Gustavus. And I thought, You make me wonder if I want to do that, because that's not a positive when we're objecting to something. We need to have a positive walk. List all your positives while you're walking, with a group of people. List them to one another. Carry signs that say what positives are and forget the politics. What are your positives? And put those in big red and black letters or whatever colors people use. That was just an idea that occurred to me. But I really, having counted interactions with people, when as a principal, I would have anywhere from probably 200 to 500 a day or 450 a day. I think somewhere in the 450 area was my maximum. And I would go home and just be overwhelmed. And how many do I have now? There are some days when I'm at home that the only person I interact with is my husband. And then there are other days when I might interact with 5 or 6 people. So I have a very low rate of, very low frequency of interacting with people these days.
True, but Abigail, you're an avid writer. And
it does give more time for writing.
In text, definitely. But I'm going to hold up something here that Abigail said to me back in 2022, and I keep it on my desk every day. And I could not believe that she said to me, I admire you so much. And I keep that next to my computer, and I look at it every single morning when I wake up. So that little positive interaction has been inspiring me and lifting me up for more than 3 years. So that's the impact that somebody can have. That's the impact that you've had on me. And every time I get stuck, I remind myself somebody extraordinary in the world saw me one day. And so it's quite amazing the impact you can have. And when Jack reached out to me and we started there's this beautiful thing. I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, Jack. But when he writes, I might cry. When he writes an email, he puts a capital Y in you, and it's very personal. It has a very big impact on me. Every time I read it, it makes me stop and just think about, how we can lift each other up. And I think you're so right. There's so much negativity right now, but we have this little project where we can inspire people to keep a record of their own data through charting, and even just counting has a profound impact, I think. And then inspiring people to see the positives, because there's so many every day. When you start to chart them, you realize, wow, just acknowledging a smile from somebody else, stopping long enough to see somebody, because we're so rushed. Half of the time, people are just walking around with phones in their faces. They literally are walking down the street, not even looking where they're going, with a phone in their face, and not acknowledging or observing people walking past them. And then you tell me, Jack, that just a smile and a wave to somebody, really impacted somebody positively. And I feel that too. I've been very aware of it since we've had this little discussion. So, Jack, do you want to talk a little bit more about, because I love that chart. If you don't mind, I'm going to share your chart in the podcast to show people. I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's impacted you and your community.
Yeah, a lot of it is what we're alluding to right now, but I'm sort of stunned in a good way when I do get to talk for a minute or two with folks, and they echo what the two of you are saying. And we need more of this in the world. And I can't believe you're doing this. And they're surprised. And then I'm elated too. I'm meeting my Buddhist teacher once a week and telling him about our project. He's in love with it too. And I was telling him about how I would like to hug people if it looks like it's a good opportunity for a positive interaction. But I'm a little afraid in this day and age. And he said, well, you might be able to just get an intuitive read on them and know that you can maybe just touch them on the shoulder. And that seems to be innocuous and works real well. But last Monday, Labor Day, I kind of hit the jackpot by walking on a walking trail. And people were coming in both directions. So interactions galore. I think I wound up with 100 just on the bike walk. Anyway, I figured, okay, I'm just going to be real, non-aggressive. And a couple was walking towards me. And I thought, I'm just going to approach them gently. And I said, it is such a beautiful day. I just feel like hugging everybody. And I said, would you two be okay with a hug? And they said, absolutely. And we embraced and went on our merry way. And then my confidence was built. And I walked another half mile or whatever. And another couple came down. And the same little MO worked with them. So I guess the point of what I'm trying to make here is I'm getting so much in return from the interact, because now I'm like on some kind of emotional drug. I'm just high as a kite. And another little one, I don't want to get too carried away here, but another little one was a family was pushing a little one in a stroller. And this little guy, they were coming towards me from 20 feet away. He might have been 8 or 9 months in the stroller, was smiling. And I got up to them and I said, congratulations on your little one. I said, his smile is radiant. And they said, oh, yeah, he just loves everyone. I said, what's his name? And she said, it's Jackson. I said, my name's Jack. So anyway, I'm getting all these positive little, and it only takes like 20, 30 seconds to have them. The other thing, if I could just divert for a little bit, and it's kind of what you, Mandy, and you, Abigail, were saying with the YouTube idea. I ordered a bunch of these little metal counters, and once in a while, I'll get a person that'll see the counter and say, well, how many steps do you have? I said, oh, this is a positive and intention counter. And I get to do my little spiel. And then that gave me the idea to start taking counters with me and at the right moment, passing them out, telling them about it, and haven't found a good way to introduce them to the chart yet. But I kind of know where they live, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess to
That's
just wind
such a
up.
lovely idea. You know what we could have? Some little tag attached to it with a link or a QR code, because everybody has phones now. And a link to the Standard Acceleration Society or something similar to explain about the chart. That's an amazing idea. I buy hundreds of those counters for my clinics. So like being able to give them out to my parents and my kids with a little tag on it about, how to keep your own data. That's such a lovely idea.
Chris Kilbasa has found rings that count. And so he wears 2 of them. And they don't work for me. I like the bead counter.
Yeah, can you show us that, Abigail? Because I will also put a link to where are they still making those?
I made this one.
You made this one?
Clay Starlin has a source that makes them. I think there aren't too many people who make them, but I made my first one in 1969, and this is my 3rd one. And
behaviors, can you count on that at once?
Well, when I started, I had 12 rows of beads, so I could count 1 behavior, 2 behaviors with the 10s in between. So with, how many was that? I could certainly count at least 6 to 10 behaviors. But when I first tried it, oh my goodness, it was terrible. I started counting 10 behaviors at one time and I stopped within a day. I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I'm a person who is a counter and have been counting pretty much all my life, although insignificant things, like how many pebbles did I see today that were on the sidewalk instead of off the sidewalk? Silly things like that that you do that some people do when they're 8 years old. So, but this one, is really helpful to me. Now I have, how many behaviors do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, I count 5, 6. And some of the things I count are like words written per day and words edited, since I'm a writer. And I don't use the counter for that. Well, for the editing, I do sometimes. But for the writing, I just go back and look at how much I've written. So,
Abigail, for people that are listening to this podcast and not seeing it on YouTube, can you just describe your counter that you wear?
It's a watch.
Yeah.
Which has lost its battery, so I don't necessarily even use the watch anymore because I have a Fitbit. But I use pipe cleaners and then small beads. I like wooden ones. I could use plastic ones, but I happen to like wooden ones. And it's used like an abacus. Yeah. So when I have 9 and then I have a 10th one, I put all the 9s, all the 1s rows, all the 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 back. And then I put a 10 and then I have 10 and then I put another one on the 1s, which would be 11. And occasionally on that one, thoughts about writing, I call them writing ideas, I might go over 100. And then I tend to, on some of them, I'll use the middle row, like I might have edits and forgetting. So the middle one I might use for the tens. So I'd have editing, the number of edits I make. And when I'm writing, it doesn't matter whether it's a word, a paragraph. If I strike out a whole page, that's one. I'm not going to go through and see, because it's like that idea is not going to work. So it goes away.
And then,
to think.
Abigail, you must have a discipline around charting that data. How do you then collect it and chart it?
I chart it every morning. I don't chart it at night. I chart it in the morning. And I'm working on a book right now that one of the people that it involves is that I write about is Pavlov. And he had a precision that was like Og Lindsley's.
Wow.
You know, when he taught at the University of St. Petersburg, he would check the cloakroom and see which students were present before he went into the lecture. And he was extremely punctual, different from Og Lindsley. I mean, his precision in his own personal behavior is absolutely marvelous. And it's one of the things that I definitely want to include there. I mean, it makes me feel as if I've been in the room where he gave the lectures. I have not been in his lab building, and I've not been at Koltushi, which is about 15 miles outside of St. Petersburg. And I would love to go back and go to those two things in his apartment, but now is not quite the right time. And I've had every American agree with me. I had one Russian say, it'll be fine. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to do this through research. I mean, I've been to the lecture hall where he gave these lectures to students, and it was incredibly impressive. And he had a personality like Og Lindsley, which was extremely outgoing. If something made him angry or something made him happy, he would definitely express it. He spent 3 months in the summertime not working. He would read books, he'd talk philosophy, he'd go swimming, everything he did was completely unrelated to the research that he was doing with the dogs. And so, it's really easy for me to sit there and picture an interaction with him because he just was so expressive. And I don't know how I got on such detail about Pavlov, but he is really
it's relevant in terms of your precision around keeping your own data and the impact it has when you do that. So I think in the medical, they say, physician, heal thyself. And when you're taking your own data, that has a really profound impact on attending to data, attending to your own behavior. So I think it's really relevant. Plus everything you say, Abigail, is so fascinating. So, so thank you for sharing, because that's been very inspiring to me in terms of how you collect data about yourself and chart it. And we've talked before about your epilepsy and how that occurred. I don't remember if I asked you about how this obsession with collecting your own data occurred. Like, where did it start? You mentioned you were doing this when you were just a little girl.
Right. Yeah, I think because I was very ill when I was 5, and when I came out of it, it was like I knew something in my brain had changed and I was different. And I didn't know what. I mean, I'm 5 years old. The world didn't know what. I mean, if I'd said something to Dr. Joe, the family physician, he would have shrugged his shoulders or would have said, that's interesting or something. My mother would have said, oh, and turned around and done something very practical. And my father was a scientist. And so I don't know. I remember being 8 years old, and maybe I started counting earlier. I don't know. But I do remember counting just odd little things, like how many trees are in this block on this side of the street versus that side of the street, or weird things like that. But I didn't start counting anything personal until that would have been 49 that I would have started that. And it wasn't until 1969, 20 years later, that I started counting personal inner behaviors. Well, no, they weren't even that. I counted, we weren't married at the time, and thinking about it in retrospect with what I'm about to say, I wonder why I did marry him, but he was a lovely man in many ways. I think I'm the only person on the planet who thinks that of him, but he made a lot of negative statements, and he had a very sarcastic, sardonic way about him, and he was almost angry at society. And so we were driving from his place up to mine, which was about a 30-minute drive, and I decided I was going to count the number of negatives he said to me. Well, I also had to count the number of positives he said to me. So in these 30 minutes, I ended up, I think I have it written down somewhere, but I ended up with a count of about 25 positives and no negatives. And I thought, well, that's interesting because a part of it was his tone of voice. And so he was not giving out a bunch of negatives to me. And that's when I started saying, okay, this is not about him. This is about me and how I interpret what people say to me. And at that point, I realized I needed to count inner behavior. And Eric Houghton was at the U of O. I'd already taken the precision teaching class from him 2 years ago, 2 years before that. And then Diana Dean was also there. And she was, as like Eric, was very interested in counting inner behavior. So Diana and I mulled over, what do we count? How do we count? And I wish I had some clear memory of one of those conversations, but we would spend hours, day after day after day, talking about how do we pinpoint this? How do we get something precise on this? How do we handle not describing, but counting? How do we pinpoint these behaviors? And we've come a long way now. When I think of me counting interactions, and then all of a sudden Jack says, well, count positive interactions. Well, when I was counting interactions, the world wasn't negative the way it is now.
Yeah.
But you can't watch the news without it being negative. And my husband and I do watch the news every evening. We watch PBS, public broadcasting. What's it called? Anyway, it's the unadulterated. It's not the political commentary that you get on MSNBC or Fox News or even CBS or ABC. There's no commentary unless they say we're going to interview this person and they're going to give you they'll state their opinions. And so, I like the news cut and dried. And then I can make my own judgments on that. Does that answer your question?
Lots of questions, actually. So I think I'm trying to link here, Abigail, because, first of all, I want to ask if people want to read more about inner behaviour, because this is something that people outside of our field often state, behaviour science completely ignores any behaviour inside the skin. I think that's a big misunderstanding of our field. Where would you direct them to learn more about inner behavior?
Oh, that's a very interesting question because I think most of, if not all, of our publications have been academic.
Yeah.
And in order to answer that question for anybody on the street, it needs to be not academic. In fact, I almost thinking, and this is heresy for me to say this, but I'm almost thinking, don't talk about the chart. Get them looking at the positives, such as Jack is doing when he's interacting with people. And then I like if Jack or we do a YouTube, which should be done that you give a link to the chart for those people who are interested.
Cool.
But it's not, we might get more takers. I was talking to Kent Corso and I said, how many people are members of the Standard Acceleration Society? And he said about 200, which is what it has been year after year after year. And I sure would like to see it many, many, many more than that.
Yeah.
But you have to look at, do people think mathematically? And when I was a principal, one of my school psychologists said, well, we started looking at what do we need to do? How do we know when somebody might be interested in charting? And at that particular point, I had a staff of 54 certified people, 80% of whom had a master's degree, and 2 of those had a doctorate. And so to introduce charting to that staff, they just ate it up. And half the staff was charting the next day, or maybe that day when they went back to the classroom. In a regular public school, it just goes right past them, just like walking across a stream. And so who's your audience? So one of the things we came up with is if you ask someone what time it is and they tell you it's 12:37, that's a sign that they might do it. If they tell you it's about 12:30, probably not going to turn them into a charter, or if they give you the details of a story, that would be another sign. So that would be something for us, for others in the field to take a look at. Who are the people who are apt to chart? And don't try and teach somebody who, I have 3 grandchildren. 2 of them from the age of 5, you ask them what their favorite subject is, and they say math.
Yeah.
All the time, math is their favorite subject. And then I have an 8-year-old, they're teenagers. I have an 8-year-old granddaughter. I can clearly tell math is not what she's going to say when I ask her what her favorite subject is. I haven't asked her yet, but I'm going to do that before we go back to Gustavus. And, what's your favorite? Hers might be recess. She loves gymnastics and the trampoline and skiing and this kind of stuff, but I'm sure it's not going to be math. I'd be very surprised if it would.
And Abigail, what's your favorite subject, math?
It's interesting. I always thought my favorite subject was English and literature. And yet when I, probably 5 or 10 years ago, looked back on all of the test scores, standardized, national, like the Scholastic Aptitude was, or whatever it is, the SATs, Scholastic Aptitude tests that, some colleges require, or the different tests that you can take for graduate school that are required. And I look back and all my top scores were in math. And it was like, well, here I was taking 6 years of Latin, 9 years of French, 2 years of German. I should have been taking, trigonometry and calculus. I've never had a calculus course, and I feel that a shortcoming. I should have taken chemistry. But when I was a kid, my father was a chemist, my sister was a chemist, my brother was a geologist. It's like, we don't need any more scientists in the family. We don't need any more chemists. So I ignored that, which was a mistake. But I'm a person who's good at languages, who loves math. I love numbers.
Yeah.
And when I share my charts with my physicians, they want them. I don't know what they do with them, but they definitely, when I showed it, the first one to the epileptologist, he said, this is a man with a international reputation, probably. And he very obsequiously said, "May I make a copy of that?" In just about that tone of voice. And I'm thinking, this man has published over 90 articles. He's president of this and that organization that have to do with epilepsy. And he's obsequiously asking me if he can have a copy of it. So I've had 4 physicians, one of which was a cardiologist who was fascinated by the data that I showed him. But none of those 4 have said, I wonder if we could get some of the other patients to do this. Yeah. Which, of course, and within precision teaching, we have Sheila and Imrena, but, we need, and I belong to an epilepsy group, and I verbally shared data with them, but I've not had anybody ask me, how do you do this? How can I do this?
Yeah, I'm always amazed by that too, because same with my interactions with people. Often I'll talk to teachers and they'll go, wow, we can see there's been a profound improvement in this little kid's reading when we never thought he would read. And I will share charts and say, this is their trajectory of letter sounds and letter names and sounding out words. But no one ever says to me, could you teach me to do that? Could you show me how to chart? I guess the response.
I have had people say that to me, but
yeah, it looks effortful when you first see a chart. I know when I first show parents, they get a little scared when you first show the chart. It looks like something quite complicated. As soon as they see the one line and how quickly you can drop a dot on a chart, it opens up a conversation. But I'm always amazed.
What I do and I don't work with children anymore, what I do when I shared a chart with a parent or other administrators or a group of teachers was see how this is going up and see how this part is going down. I don't get into the numbers at all. It's just look at it visually and see what is happening. I want this to go up. I want this to go down, and they are. Yeah. And I actually have had, there was some argument that was going on in a meeting about how this student was he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. And they were ready to, you can't throw them out. Where are you going to throw them, for one? Nonverbal, severe. He was classified as having autism. Whether he did or not, I don't know. To me, he fit into some other category that is unnamed. So everybody was just slamming this kid and the parents and everything else. And I just put the chart in front of them and they all got quiet. It's like they weren't ready to homeschool him or whatever they were thinking of doing. So I found, but you don't explain the chart to them. And that's a mistake that I think we often make. If you haven't seen Charting Rates with Stephanie Bates, have you seen that?
No.
Oh, one of Ogg's graduate students in the mid-'60s all of a sudden his name is eluding me. Doug Bates had a 5-year-old, Stephanie, and it's called Charting Rates with Stephanie Bates. And the mother was German. The language of the home was German. And so Doug explained the chart to the little girl in German, and she teaches the chart in English. And then she says, I don't understand the bottom half of the chart, but my daddy showed me a different way to look at it. And the 0.001 line is 1 per day. And then it's 2 per day, 3 per day, 5 per day, blah, 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 10 per day, 20 per day, etc. You need to see it. It's absolutely marvelous.
All right.
And I don't know whether it might be on YouTube. I don't know. I'm not sure where it is, but it's definitely worth looking at. You have to explain it from the point of view of a 5-year-old when you're talking to a group of parents and administrators or people who have no concept of what you're talking about. And because math in this country is a very negative topic. So you just have to explain it as if you're talking to a 5-year-old, as if you are a 5-year-old. I find that very helpful.
This episode of the ABA and PT podcast is brought to you by my new parent training course, The 6 Pillars of Parenting. Now on Udemy, you can find the link at www.mmpt.io for less than the cost of my weekly coffee bill. I help parents get unstuck with their kids using behaviour science from a parent perspective through practical evidence-based strategies from ABA and precision teaching. It's an easy, affordable resource for professionals to share with their families. I hope you enjoy the 6 pillars of parenting. I often say to parents, see right down here, this dot, right down the bottom of the chart, this is the number of coffees I drink a day. And like right up here, this is the number of words I can read per minute. And that's the full extent of the chart. So
great.
That's kind of how I describe it to them. That makes a lot of sense. So, where do this behavior sit and where do you think this behavior would sit? That's a lot of information. But I think what you were saying there is, as soon as the response effort becomes too high, like we're sometimes so excited by our chart, I'm like, wow, look at this amazing thing. This changed my daughter's life. And you can chart this and this and this. And meanwhile, they're like, whoa, it's too much. So in this little project, I think you're right. The focus is, or something else that I think people really align with, that 10,000 steps a day, like a goal a day of how many steps to take. I did chart my data once on steps, and it's really interesting to do that because you can collect all your data off your Apple Watch on your steps, and it collects the information, over a long period of time. And it's really interesting to see that on a chart. But having a goal is something like that's an easy sort of task to say, it would be nice to have 20 positive interactions a day, and that would be something you could click and not have to chart necessarily. And it's interesting because I did that too. I was like, well, I'm kind of I feel like when I first started, if I look back at my chart, it was like 10 a day. And you'd think, I guess, because I'm not counting, if I'm seeing 10 students a day, I was just counting the first interaction. That's our operational definition, is just the first interaction a day with that person and not all of them, which makes it a lot easier to collect. So, I might have been having 10 or 15. I just set myself a goal by the end of the week to hit 20, and I hit 25 easily. So just being aware of the count per day without even charting it is a really good start, I think, and maybe setting yourself a goal.
One of the things people say to me is, I can't believe how positive you are, Abigail. Oh. And it's like, how much effort does it take to be positive?
Right.
It's, it doesn't, to me, it takes a
really good question, though, isn't it? Because it seems a lot easier to be negative because there's so much opportunity for saying negative things in the world, right? So I think it's amazing how quickly you can turn it around, change the trajectory of your positive interactions when you count them, be aware of them. Because I always talk to kids about, like a negative statement funnel. When you call upon a negative statement, like, oh, I stubbed my toe and now it's going to be at this. Some of my students come to me, I stubbed my toe on the way to my session. Now it's going to be a bad day, and I've got, this teacher today and la, 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 and la, la, la. And it's like this funnel, it gathers momentum like water down a sink. I always talk about that. I'm like, but guess what? You can change the trajectory of this by turning that around. I stubbed my toe and I'm going to have a good day. We can change the trajectory of this funnel.
One of the things that happened, I was asked to consult with the clinical staff, a small portion, like 6 of them, 8 of them, who worked with soldiers at one of the Army bases. One of the things I suggested was that they look at the number of positives. And the neurological psychologist who worked with a group of people with PTSD who were at risk of a dishonorable discharge or a discharge, not being, I mean, they were in such bad shape with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that they were not, their 8-hour assignment for their day was to be in a therapy group. And so he said, I want you to come in and watch this group, but you can't say a thing. Well, my thought was, good heavens, you're the neuropsychologist who's in charge of this group. I would not say a word. You have invited me in. So I was observing and I started counting because it's like, that's just one of the things I do. And he was asking, okay, let's list the positives that you have and let's list the negatives that you have. And I've done this in graduate courses. And the negative column fills up really fast. And you have to keep saying, I want some positives. Give me some positives. And this group of people with severe PTSD just had a terrible time coming up with them. And as I counted their comments, most of their negatives were, some were directed at themselves, but most of them were directed at their CO, their commanding officer, who might be a sergeant. So then I received a photograph, which unfortunately was taken between two windows with bright sunshine. This was maybe 2 weeks or a month later. He had them write on yellow Post-it notes, what are these, 2.5 by 2.5 or something? Positives, no names or anything else. And when they walked in, they had their sheet and they stuck it on the wall. And I got a great photograph. Somehow I need to reproduce that. And then so I can show that and say that it's a model of it.
I love that imagery. Like, right?
He did he chart?
It up on the
no,
wall.
He didn't chart at all.
No, he took
the principles of it.
Yeah.
And he them.
But just the visual effect of having those up. Wow.
Oh my gosh. It was incredible. It was at the entire wall. You know, there was wall, window, wall, window, wall. So there were 3 sections of wall. They were filled with these yellow Post-it notes.
I love this. Wow. This is a great YouTube video, Abigail. You've just come up with a brilliant idea here.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
I love that. Definitely. Something that just brought up this little image for me. I have these 2 kids with autism in my program, and they used to go to school together, but now one of them is full-time homeschooled with me and the other one goes to school. But they know that they both come to the clinic, and every day they wrote a Post-it note to each other. And there's now this thick wad of Post-it notes on the walls of these little positive interactions. I miss you. I hope you had a good day, Frank. Wow. And then it will say something funny like, you forgot to put a capital at the beginning of my name. But I hope you had a great weekend. That's great. Interactions. I mean, and we love this. We keep it in our cubby. All the other kids know about it. And it's been going on for months. And we have this wad of positive little interactions between them. But the idea of, I have this other image where somebody once covered it's in YouTube as well. Somebody once covered a car in Post-it notes, the whole car. But imagine these little positive interactions, writing them down and putting them on the wall and having a record of, of a permanent product of, positive interactions that you're having throughout the day. That's a lovely image. I love that.
He never asked me, how do I chart this?
Yeah.
But by golly, I am absolutely positive that man changed the behavior of, maybe some of them were able to get well enough that they could stay in the Army. But, and that some of the experiences that they had in the military were so horrific that no wonder they had PTSD. Anybody, if I'd had I probably would have died by suicide if I'd had one of those situations that one person spoke of. Well, actually didn't talk at all. Absolutely didn't talk at all. So traumatized. But one of either he or the psychiatrist in the group mentioned what that person had been through. It's like, boy, I don't think I'd be alive if I'd been through that. I mean, it's just, how do you handle some of these things? And so this is a leap from our conversation, but we need to work with a simpler group before we get into something, like how do we deal with these people who are at serious risk for suicide? And I have only one suicide chart. And I asked the person years later, because I think it was thoughts about suicide, did you have any urges? And the person said, no, I had no urges. That makes a critical difference. because you're going to act on an urge, or you're going to act on several urges if they come in rapid succession. So, it's a really important area, but that's taking the negative, and how do you take that and turn that around 180 degrees, not 360, because if it's 360, you'll be back at suicide.
Yeah.
So turn it 180 to the positives. And
can I ask you a question there, Abigail? What is the because of all of your knowledge of inner behavior, what is the interaction between, say, having either outwardly making a positive statement or saying a positive statement to yourself? What's the interaction between those two things, do you think? If you celebrate inner positive statements, is that likely then to show up more as outward behavior?
That's a good research question. I have no idea. But that's a really good idea. And I don't venture opinions on something like that because I don't know. And so my response to something like that is, well, that's something we need to, that's a good master's or doctoral thesis or research project for somebody who already has a PhD to do.
Well, I felt that because you've really encouraged me to start free writing positive statements just for a minute in the morning every day. And that really raised my attention to those positive statements. And I always start it with, I've got this. That's my first one. I've got this. And that statement in my clinic, we often reach out to each other in a hard day and fist pump and say, we've got this. So that shows up a lot. I've got this beautiful one little girl that will always come out to me in a rough session and go, hey, we got this. We got this. And one of my parents says that to me as well. She's got 5 kids in my program. And every day she goes, hey, we got this. So, I mean, that's not a research study, obviously, but practicing saying those things and being fluent so that you can call upon them without any effort
exactly
is very likely to result in then making it more available and then recruiting reinforcement for that behavior.
I was just thinking about what you were saying. Yeah.
Certainly had a profound impact on me. So how about you, Jacqueline? You are now charting these outward positive interactions of which you have developed a operational definition so that we can pinpoint it. Have you noticed that you might be more likely to say positive interactions, positive statements to yourself as a result of being so aware of these positive interactions with others?
That's really interesting. I think I mentioned earlier that I'm working with my Buddhist teacher on trying to receive the precepts. And this Monday, when I meet with him, we're going to talk about the first pure precept of Buddhism, which is do no harm. And one thing I want to address is self-harm. And I have noticed that I don't have it down on paper or down on a chart, but I have noticed I've been a lot gentler with myself just probably since early July when we started our project. And when I was telling you about the walk on the bike trail, I thought I might levitate when I was done. I was so pumped up.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I messaged a friend and I said, Elaine, I am so excited. I can't remember how I phrased it. I'm positively pumped up. Not quite a PPI, but a PPU. Anyway, so I think it's affecting.
In there, Abigail, because now we're talking about inner behavior, right? When you're talking about being pumped up, being motivated, are we getting back to something inner here?
Oh, I think so. But we're also talking about something outer. There was something that happened. It wasn't something that happened. It was the way of life in my family when I was growing up. My mother often verbalized it as, if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
And I have listened to that statement since I was probably pre-verbal. And people have commented on how positive I am. I live in a town. When we moved there were 300 people. Now there are 600. But I've often had people comment on how positive I am. And it's like, I grew up in a very positive environment. And you were not allowed to say something negative. If you did, you'd go to your room. And if the other person, a sibling or a cousin, would say a negative back, you'd both go to your room. Well, usually it was my brother and me, and we shared, or his closet had a door into my room. So we would spend our time playing Sorry, Parcheesi, Monopoly, chess, checkers, whatever. We had these games set when we were like, I was 5, he was 13, and we would but it had to be, you didn't say something negative about people, let alone 2 people. you could criticize an action, you could criticize a situation, but you better have backup for it. But there were not that many critical comments. I mean, dinner table conversations were, I remember one about my father being a chemist, and I was 8 years old, and the dinner table conversation was about carbon-14. They had just announced its discovery, and he later, 12 years later, won the Nobel Prize for it. But there was I, 8 years old. Why I didn't go into chemistry, I have no idea. Absolutely fascinated by the fact that you could take a piece of wood and carbon date it and find out how old it was. And my sister, who was a chemist at the time, and she was at home and lived at home, she was a university student, actually. And so it was a natural conversation. And so these things, it wasn't, you were not allowed to insult someone. And my parents, and I had two grandmothers who lived with us, and two aunts and cousins, and you just didn't say negative things. That was that. And I think that gave me my orientation it gave me the background for inner behavior and looking at it in a positive way, or outer behavior. Telling a kid, I remember in my first teaching job, which was, I think, the second or third year of it, and the paraprofessional and she said to me, I am so sick and tired of saying, good job, good job. And I said, yeah, Susan, you're right. We got to come up with something else. This is terrible when we're bored with the praise we give. So a tap on the table, a thumbs up, a pat on the back, whatever. And so it's, give the positives. Yeah. And when I consult with teachers now and they're dealing with negative behaviors, well, one thing is, who's the alpha dog in this situation? I mean, I don't say dog, but who's the alpha person in this situation? And if you're dealing with emotionally, behaviorally disturbed kids, they're the alpha dog. And you got to switch that around. They're the alpha person. And you as the teacher have a responsibility to shift that around because they need it. I have yet to meet a kid who wants to be in charge and be negative. They want the adult to be in charge. They want to get some praise. They don't object to things being turned around on them.
Yeah. Well, every student that comes to our clinic, we chart all session positive and negative statements. And that is a big indicator to me. That's the first thing I look at every day on my students' charts. And if I see, acceleration in negative statements, straight away I'm looking, saying, what's happening here? How did they show up? What did mum and dad say about the session? What were the negative statements? It's a very big indicator. And if it's like, this is too hard, I can't do this, I'm stupid or whatever it is. But you know what? Straight away, we start to prompt that. We practice it. We do free say positive statements at the beginning of the session. I got this. I can pass out my programs. I can get better. I can improve. I can practice, all of those things. And then we recruit reinforcement and we provide huge amounts of feedback for positive statements. And we get this beautiful, fair pair on the chart. And then as soon as the parents turn up, I had a great session, Mum. I rang the bell 5 times. I got an improvement in my test score today. I passed out this program. I got a certificate, you see it. So straight away the parents are going, wow, that was a great session. My kid's getting better. You can see the flow and effect of this. So I love that you started out like that. I think I had the complete opposite in my life. So much negativity and always complaining that I grew up in that kind of family. There was a lot of stuff to complain about. So there's so many things that have come up. Jack, do you want to say, I'm going to check how long we've been recording here. So well over an hour. So just to start, thank you, Abigail, for being on this journey. Jack, thank you for coming up with this. I needed this in my life, and I think a lot of people do. We have the expert in inner behavior here. Now I have a research project on inner behavior versus outer behavior. And where to from here, do you think? I love this project. I want to promote it, and certainly to precision teachers and beyond. We have an operational definition, Jack, something that people can count, can work on. I'm going to publish that in the podcast. Abigail has planted the idea of some YouTube videos to promote this little project. I think we need a website that we can send people to and talk about it. And I'm going to start taking photos of Post-it notes and putting it up on our wall and sharing that. Where do you want to see this project go, Jack?
I just like all these ideas about furthering it through a YouTube, passing out counters. And I loved what Abigail said about you don't really need to chart it. I've been encouraging people, the 4 counters I've given out is just put your total on your calendar because everybody has like 100 calendars from national. And at least they have the data. And I might follow up. 2 of the people go to my church. So I might follow up later and get their counts and ask them if they'd like to see the chart. But yeah, I think that's what we do. We expand, try to get more positive butterflies out there and so on. The YouTube video, that would be powerful. And it doesn't have to be long.
Great.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to get a box of little counters at the front of my clinic. Kids love those counters, right? They love counting stuff. As soon as they work out, they love the click and they love the count. Yeah.
No, I didn't have a counter. I just, would count it in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the expressions, one of the children's rhymes is step on a crack, you break your mother's back. But that wasn't the point. That wasn't what I counted. What I counted were the cracks in the pavement that shouldn't have been there because the pavement was old enough or had enough salt put on it in the wintertime to melt the snow. So how many cracks were in the pavement? And it had nothing to do with breaking your mother's back. It had nothing to do with a childhood rhyme. But it just had to, random things that I was counting.
Wow, you're a born precision teacher, weren't you? Born as a precision teacher. Isn't it extraordinary that somebody like that found their way to Ogden? I guess, isn't that amazing? A born precision
if I hadn't found my way to Ogden, I would have found my way. Yeah, I would have been struggling. I mean, I've often thought, what if I had stayed living in Scotland? And I would have had to figure this out, and then I would have, I probably would have gotten into psychology and into behavior, and then I would have heard of him when I was 50 instead of when I was 24 or whatever. But, it was. So it was, I really like the idea of a YouTube. I really do. And it can be, I don't know how, I haven't researched them. I mean, there are some that I really like. I tend to like the music YouTubes, tend to be what I go to when I hear a particular piece of music. But, we've got to, how short does it need to be? How long does it need to be? What do we put in it? I really haven't researched it, but it just, YouTube, people click on them. And we need to get 20,000 hits too, Jack.
I'm going to reach out to Ryan O'Donnell. Do you know who that is?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
He's obviously a storyteller. Oh, well, of course, a behavior scientist.
Very good.
But I'm in contact with him, and I think he'll have some great ideas here. Very good at producing content. And I'm talking to him about making a movie about ABA and the impact it's had on my daughter. So we're looking at making a movie together. So I'll have a chat to him, put my notes together, reach out to you guys, and let's get this party started.
Yes.
His history of behavior analysis through the University of Kansas is, and
have you seen that, Jack? Have you seen that movie, The History of ABA by Ryan O'Donnell?
I have not.
Oh, I'm going to send it to you. You'll love it.
Right. It's long.
And he's put out one on Morningside as well. So I'll put the links to that. And he has a website I can link to. But I just encourage everybody to watch that. It's wonderful what he's doing. Extraordinary person. I'm very grateful to be in contact with him. But, his philosophy is we need more stories about our science. It's one thing to talk about our data and our research, etc., but we need more stories. The story that, there we go. There's the book right here. This changed the trajectory of my life. Let Me Hear Your Voice by Catherine Maurice. The most
amazing. Put it in the chat.
Oh, yeah. It's changed my life because this was a mother impacted by her child's autism. She found her way to ABA. And then, this book has had a profound impact on millions of people and millions of
some reflection on it. Or is that on the cover?
Yeah, that's the cover. Let Me Hear Your Voice. That's a window.
Okay.
Catherine Maurice. That's not her real name. Catherine, if you happen to hear this, please reach out to me. I want to make a movie about your extraordinary impact that you've had on me and millions of other parents around the world. And that is the story of ABA, and it changed the trajectory of her child's life. And then that was one of the first books I ever read when my child was diagnosed. And so, that profound stories are so impactful in terms of people contacting our science. So I think, Jack, is there something you want to say just in summary? We covered so much because with Abigail, you have so much information that you could just talk about forever. But it's just wonderful to have both of you together talking about this inner behavior, outer behavior. How do we get more positives? How do we overcome all of the challenges that all of us are facing every day in the news and just all of the negativity, what's happening in the Middle East? And what would you like to say in summary?
I just want to thank both of you. I don't feel like I'm alone now. And from January till the email that you sent and reconnected with me, Mandy, I felt like it was okay, but now it's like supercharged.
Yeah.
So I just want to end with a thank you for all these ideas, especially expanding and expansion and so on. And Mandy, thank you for writing the definition or operative definition, because that needed to be done. And I wasn't even thinking that we needed a formal definition. And it did get a little bit long, but it's okay.
Yeah, we can summarize that.
Mandy, I keep on thinking, I have not watched all the podcasts or listened to all the podcasts that you've done, and I need to do that. And it's like finding the time. Well, first of all, if I'm driving in my community, I'm driving for maybe 10 minutes, and it's really hard to listen to a podcast 10 minutes by 10 minutes by 10 minutes. I don't sew, I don't draw, I don't do any of those things where I could take a distraction. And, when I'm writing, I can't listen to something. And so I definitely, what you have done, the amount of work that you have compiled for the chart, and when we do a YouTube, when Jack does a YouTube, whoever, that what you have done, I mean, it's how do we expand this? And you've done a great job with all of the interviews. And someday I will
just... an idea, Abigail, because people always feed back to me, they're too long. I don't have time to absorb them all. I always try and keep it to 45 minutes, but they never do. But that's given me a great idea to do a summary of them. And I can pull out little pieces and do, 10-minute excerpts for each of them, because I just re-listened to, I've listened to yours lots. I just re-listened to Jack's, and it really, really impacted me. It's called The Butterfly Effect. So that's a great idea. So many ideas coming out of what we've talked about. I'm going to summarize those. Jack, I'll reach out to you about how we can get an interim website going just with this idea. So there's some information that people can link to, and maybe something they can subscribe to register their interest in this project and be part of it. And I'll reach out to Ryan as well. I think we should regroup this in a month or so and see where we got to. How does that sound?
And Jack, I want to mention, I know Mandy probably can't make it on short notice, but remember that there's a Standard Acceleration Conference in Savannah the first weekend in November. Okay. And Jack, you only live in Ohio. You don't. I'm going. I'm doing a presentation on, I forget exactly what it is, but it's, climate change and mass migration. Actually, confession B, maybe I shouldn't put that on the podcast, but Chris Kilbasa and I submitted it when neither one of us, he was working on his dissertation and I was about to get a knee replacement. So I did nothing. So both of us, we have a lot of data to collect between now and the beginning of November and chart. But if you can come to the conference, it would be a great opportunity. I remember when you were at the one in Reno. It was wonderful to see you, and people really appreciated your being there. So, Mandy, you can come too, but I don't think you're going to make a last-minute plan.
Oh, you never know. I'd love to be there.
I know.
Yeah.
And Savannah is an absolutely gorgeous city.
Wow, is it? Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm going early so that I can spend time in Savannah. And I visited there 19 times because my parents lived there.
I've been there 19 times. I love that so much.
Oh, yeah, right there. That's the specificity I'm talking about. And I drive my son and my husband absolutely insane with this. And I mean, my son almost doesn't talk to me because it's like, oh, she's going to ask me a question or she's going to give me a specific number of times things happened. And so
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that attention to detail and just there we go. We have an operational definition of a born precision teacher, someone that attends to detail, counts things early on. All right. On that note, this has been just such a joy. I'm so grateful to have you talk about this, Jack. Thank you for creating this, Jack. I needed this so bad. I didn't even know I needed it. And let's get this party started and we'll launch the podcast. We'll get some material out there, reach out to Ryan and set it alight in the world.
It sounds good.
Excellent idea.
I was just thinking we have both hemispheres of the earth.
That's right.
The southern and the northern.
About as far away from Abigail as we can get. And now we can cover the planet.
Are you in the Eastern or the Western Hemisphere, Mandy?
I'm in, Western Australia, right down the very bottom of Australia. Yep.
Right, but is that the Eastern Hemisphere or the Western Hemisphere?
It's the Western
You're not sure.
Hemisphere.
Okay, so you're in the same, but we have the North and the South Hemisphere covered. We
Right.
just are in the
North and
Western.
South. Yeah, okay. We need to look to the
So we
east.
got to get somebody in the Eastern
Okay, we've got to
Hemisphere.
recruit someone in the East. Anyone there that wants to be part of this project so we can cover the entire planet, please reach out to me and we'll link you in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Mandy.
guys.
Thank you, Mandy.
great
Thank
to
you,
hear
Abigail.
Yeah.
And Jack for that idea. That's marvelous.
That's marvelous.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thanks for listening to episode 18 of the ABA and PT podcast and for being part of the Precision Positive Interaction Project. If you want to be part of this journey, you can find more resources in our private Facebook group and stay tuned for more updates as Jack shares this project with the world. In episode 19, I'm unbelievably excited to welcome Dr. Bob Borsham to speak on the podcast to talk about his journey to behaviour science and his extraordinary knowledge of the chart and precision teaching. He's a PT treasure, and my podcast has been missing what I call Borsham wisdom. I've been waiting for this episode for a long time and I can't wait to bring it to you. See you in episode 19.